I want to talk about the American dream of home ownership, of having and owning your own house, of building a modicum of security and perhaps even wealth through this accumulation of equity in one's home. This has been a critical part of the American experience, going really back to the early 19th century. Think of all the pioneers who went west. They put their stakes into the ground. They built their homesteads. That was their little piece of heaven. And for many American families since, the idea that you can move into a house, you can get a mortgage, put a down payment, and slowly become the full and undisputed owner of that house, certainly by the time you retire, and then have something to leave to your children. This is an inextricable part of the American family aspiration. It's part of upward mobility. It's part of what Americans hope for and what immigrants come here for. Now, it's a very disturbing set of stories in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere about how huge hedge funds, pension funds, and so-called REITs, real estate investment trusts, are amassing giant sums of money, billions, tens of billions, in some cases, trillions of dollars. Think of what a trillion is. A billion is 1,000 million. A trillion is 1,000 billion. So these are people with the kind of resources that you and I can only dream of. We can't hope to compete with or match. And what these huge hedge funds are doing is they're moving into neighborhoods all around the country and buying up homes. Not a home here, not a home over there. They're buying up whole developments of homes. Let me give a couple of examples. This is actually right out of the Wall Street Journal in an article called Meet Your New Landlord, Wall Street. So real estate agent Don Nugent lists a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on Joanne Drive in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And a young couple with a small child decides to make an offer. And they're offering full price, $208,000 for this starter home. But it turns out that there was a competing bid. The competing bid was not from another family. It came from a group called American Homes for Rent. This is a public company which has a massive portfolio of cash. And they offered exactly the same price, $208,000, all cash. So in other words, no loan, no waiting period, no risk. We'll write you a check. And so who do you think got the home? Yes, American Homes for Rent got it. And literally 12 hours after the house went on the market, they signed a contract, they wrote a check. A month later, the exact same house was back on the market, but this time for rent at $1,575 per month. So what's going on here is that these giant investment firms are buying properties. And like I said, it's not one property. We're now going to talk about a small community in Texas, a neighborhood of 124 homes. In swoops the big corporation and buys the entire SFR. What's an SFR? Single family rentals. So it's not single family homes to own. They buy the home and then they look for people to rent it. So what's going on here is a trend, and this is happening, by the way, not just in one place. It's happening all over. It's happening in San Diego. It's happening in the South. It's basically happening in all desirable communities where you have nice homes, good schools, relatively safe neighborhoods, and the effect of it, that's what I really want to talk about just briefly here, and I'm going to talk more about this in subsequent podcasts, is to turn the American family owner into an American family renter. So remember that rent is something you pay out. You're not building equity. It doesn't go toward anything. And you can't build wealth that way. You're just paying out. In equity, when you make a mortgage, and see, most Americans I think this is actually a pity, don't save enough. They don't save a lot. Now you might say, well, man, Dinesh, I can't really save all that much. I don't make all that much. But nevertheless, the point being that for most Americans, their wealth is in their home. This simple kind of required act of paying the mortgage over time, well, a lot of it at the beginning goes just to paying interest. But over time, it starts piling up some equity. And that's how you build some wealth in your home. But if you don't have that available to you, if every time you try to buy a home, some big company comes in and bids, and some of these companies are bidding 20, 30, 40%, in some cases double of the asking price. They're essentially outbidding the ordinary American trying to buy a home. The social impact of this cannot be good. It cannot be positive. It's very bad for the American dream. Now, there are people who are going to say, and some people have said, and here's a couple of tweets from Ben Shapiro, where he says, in effect, this is capitalism. This is the way it is. He goes, I'd like for you to explain how those who currently own their homes, why you're taking money out of their pocket. What he means is that if some guy owned that home before and is now getting 30 or 40% more than his asking price, he's going to be happy. So, go explain to him why he shouldn't sell to the highest bidder, even if it happens to be ABC Corporation instead of some nice family with 2 kids that's trying to. Now, Ben, of course, is aware that what happens with these big companies is that they buy these homes, then the price falls, then they go bankrupt, then they go running to the government for help. Oh, bail us out. And so Ben says correctly, no bailouts ever. He's saying if these guys want to take the risk, let them. That's their problem. That's their risk. But I think that when we think about capitalism, and I think as conservatives we don't do this enough, we've got to realize that government policies, like the market itself, do have massive cultural and social effects. They do affect the ability of the ordinary guy to get a job, get a home, and so on. What I do agree with is that we should think about these trends without always thinking about a government solution. Why? Because often the government solution is worse than the problem. So you don't want to say, hey, look, you've got these big corporations, they're doing something, the social impact of it is bad, therefore, let's turn over all this responsibility to the government. Why? Because the government's not likely to do any better. In fact, they have even less stake in the matter. They're ultimately going to manipulate the market to their benefits. You have all kinds of government incentives to create dependency, to make people leeches on the government for political reasons. And so the danger of government intervention might be equal to or greater than the danger of massive corporate control. But in either case, we need a conservatism and a republicanism that is attentive to the ordinary American family, that's attentive to the little guy who's starting at the bottom of the ladder and trying to make his way up, that pays attention at the end of the day not to government control and not even to corporate profits, but to the idea that a guy can come to this country or start in this country and make a better life for himself and his family and move up the ladder and accumulate wealth, and in that sense achieve this notion of becoming better than you are and leaving a better life or the possibility of a better life to your children than the one that you enjoyed.